The Republican Party has become a repository for unresolved trauma. There is a mental health crisis in America. Too many of us grew up in abusive families or were abandoned and unloved. When individuals fail to come to terms with this trauma, when they refuse to seek counseling and or medication, they seethe. They seethe inside, and their hostility towards their mother or father often manifests itself in the pathological objectification of human beings upon whom these very sick people act out their most sadistic impulses. These people need help, but instead they say, I'm not sick, I'm a Republican. When you look at who Donald Trump is surrounded by, the people who are drawn to him, all of them have a dark past, and they refuse to seek peace. Instead, they want revenge because they were abused, indeed hated as a child, abandoned, and because they refuse to practice introspection, they gravitate towards fascistic strongmen who will not just protect them from future emotional pain, so they think. They also believe that this fascistic strongman will make certain that others will have to pay a price for their own psychological indignities. On today's show, I'm going to discuss Tucker Carlson, his really creepy speech earlier this week where he described America as a teenage girl and Donald Trump as her daddy who needs to spank her. Tucker gave away the facade. He told us everything we need to know about him. But just to make sure you know everything about him, everything about Tucker Carlson and all the people who gravitate to Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson's mother hated him. She abandoned Tucker when he was 6. And despite being born into great wealth, she left him $1 in her will. She left Tucker Carlson when he was 6, and he never saw her again. Now, this happens all the time. Most people seek help, seek healing, learn to forgive. Instead, Tucker, like everyone Donald Trump surrounds himself with, including his children, Tucker self-medicates through bigotry, hostility, and aggression. I'll tell you the whole story later on this morning. But remember, you can't have fascism without sadistic enablers like Tucker Carlson. And you can't have sadistic enablers like Tucker Carlson without unresolved trauma. If you're voting for Donald Trump come Election Day, you're not a conservative. You're not a Republican. You're just a very sick person who refuses to come to terms with the abuse heaped upon you either as a child or as an adult. Trump isn't kidding when he tells a crowd, I am your vengeance. These people who cheer him on, who work for him, Carlson, Trump, Vance, they all lack the vocabulary for introspection, and that makes them incredibly sick and dangerous. More on this later on. I'm going to play Tucker's speech. You all saw it, but I'm going to give it the right context a little later on this morning. But first, November 5th is just 9 days away. 32 million Americans have already cast their ballots in nearly 30 states. According to the averages of A-plus pollsters, Harris leads Trump in all 3 states comprising the blue wall. If there's time at the end of this morning's show, I'm going to explain to you why some people, well-intentioned, are panicking. but I will go over the A-plus polls with you and the election modeling to show you why she's got this. You know the drill. She wins Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. That gets her to 270. This is not a good look. Hundreds and hundreds of Trump supporters walking out of his Traverse City, Michigan rally Friday night after he kept these idiots waiting 3 hours before finally soiling the stage. He was doing an interview with Joe Rogan down in Texas, and it went long, and he kept these morons waiting. This is not good. Donald Trump has no ground game, and these rallies are supposed to energize his base, help them to get the word out. Instead, at rally after rally, Trump keeps them waiting, refuses to turn on the air conditioning, and he stiffs the town. He refuses to pay sometimes $50,000, sometimes $500,000 to some cities for the police, the firefighters, and the EMTs. I'm going to discuss the polls, if there's time, at the end of the show, and I'll tell you why he's going to lose. Right now, Harris is leading in the national polls. She's been leading since she became the presumptive nominee. It's tighter than it's been. I told you it would tighten up, but she's leading. She's going to win the popular vote. That's a no-brainer. And despite what you're hearing from people who want to make the race more interesting, scarier than it actually is, the A-plus polling averages show Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump by 2 points in Michigan, 2 points in Wisconsin, and by 1 point in Pennsylvania. A lot of phony, newly created, right-wing, unreliable partisan polling operations were created after 2020 to contaminate the polling averages, flooding them with garbage data. This is being done to create the illusion that Trump is more popular than he actually is. I'll go over all this at the end of the show, but here is God's joke on Donald Trump this year. He's going all in on fascism, which means he's attracting voters who don't believe in democracy. The problem with that is people who don't believe in democracy don't vote. They believe in violence. They can't be bothered to vote, especially when cretins like Marjorie Taylor Greene keep telling everyone Dominion is switching Trump votes to Harris votes. Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State for Georgia, who's a Republican, said to Marjorie Taylor Greene, please stop telling voters that their ballots aren't being counted. It causes our side, I'm a Republican just like you, Marjorie, it causes our side to stay home on election day. Well, Donald Trump kept the idiots in Michigan waiting 3 hours. Hundreds of them walked out because he was doing an interview with Joe Rogan. And you can watch it tomorrow. Somebody sent me this clip, and it made me laugh really hard. Donald Trump was going on and on about how the 2020 election was stolen, and Joe Rogan said, well, when are you going to show us proof? Watch.
We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another one.
Are you going to present this ever? Do you think like?
Let me just give you one more before.
And he just changes the subject. Rudy Giuliani lost 60 trials, 60 hearings in the lead up to January 6th. He has not been able to present a single shred of evidence of voter fraud.
Are you going to present this ever?
Are you going to present evidence ever? Are you? You for 4 years, you've been saying the election was stolen. All we'd like to see is one piece of evidence. One piece of evidence. Trump knows he's going to lose this. That's why he kept them waiting 3 hours in Michigan last night. He doesn't care. It's why he's scheduling rallies in Virginia, which is not even a swing state. It's why this Sunday he's playing Madison Square Garden in New York City, another state, another city he doesn't stand a chance of winning. What is he doing when he's losing the blue wall? Well, he's chasing crowds. He can't stand to see half-empty rooms, so he's canceling events all over the country. This is not how you win elections. And if it is, well, we had a good run, folks. This experiment called America was, for the most part, a noble effort, but it just didn't work out. We are seeing record turnout. 12% of Pennsylvania voters have already cast their ballots. Actor Mel Gibson, who has a storied history of using the N-word and spouting anti-Semitic vitriol, told TMZ on Friday that he's voting for Donald Trump, adding, Kamala Harris has the IQ of a fence post. The Washington Post reported on Friday that its editorial board planned to endorse Kamala Harris for president, but the paper's owner, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, killed the editorial. According to CNBC, the Washington Post has endorsed presidential candidates going back to 1976, all of them Democrats. The Washington Post also reported that on the day their owner, Jeff Bezos, killed the editorial endorsing Kamala Harris, the two people who run Blue Origins, his space rocket company that does business with our government, well, those two executives greeted Donald Trump on the tarmac yesterday when he arrived in Texas. The guy on the left, his last name is Limp. I'm not making that up. The Washington Post was promised total independence back when Jeff Bezos purchased the company, and it has been producing excellent investigative journalism, especially exposing the lies and corruption in the Trump administration. Donald Trump, while president, declared Jeff Bezos his enemy and reportedly weaponized the executive branch to keep Bezos from enjoying lucrative government contracts. In 2019, Bezos' cloud computing business lost out on a $10 billion contract with the Pentagon to Microsoft. Bezos immediately filed a lawsuit claiming Trump gave the contract to Microsoft in order to punish Bezos for the reporting being done in the Washington Post. Bezos' Blue Origins is in the business of launching government satellites and helping NASA return to the moon. Meanwhile, Bill Nelson, the head of NASA, called for a government investigation after the Wall Street Journal reported that Elon Musk, the owner of SpaceX, has been in constant contact with Russian leader Vladimir Putin repeatedly during the past few years. Musk's Starlink satellite service provides data to the Ukrainian and Taiwan military. Last year, you might remember when Musk learned that Ukraine was about to launch an attack on Russian ships, he refused the Ukrainians' army request to activate his satellite network for them to do battle with the Russians. He was deciding unilaterally what the Ukrainian military could and couldn't do. The billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Times has also ordered his paper to pull an editorial endorsing Kamala Harris for president. The Guardian reports this morning that editors and reporters at both the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post have quit to protest their billionaire owners interfering with their editorial decisions. There are also reports of readers canceling their subscriptions in protest. The Hollywood Reporter says this morning that the daughter of the Los Angeles Times owner, she said the family blocked the endorsement for Kamala Harris because of Kamala Harris's support for Israel's war on the children of Gaza. 100 protesters waving pro-Palestinian flags stood outside the Houston arena where Kamala Harris was speaking Friday night. They chanted, "What does Kamala stand for? Genocide and war." Harris has said repeatedly that while Israel has the right to defend itself, she also supports a homeland for the Palestinian people, but without Hamas having any part of it. According to the Washington Post, these protesters were asked if they support Trump, and they answered no. Here is Donald Trump arriving in Detroit last weekend, being asked about the killing of Hamas's top leader. He turned it into an opportunity to praise Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's total war on the Palestinians of Gaza.
The deficit part make peace easier or more difficult?
I think it makes it easier.
Why is that?
You going to talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu about it?
He's called me, yes.
What was that conversation?
He's called me. I have not spoken. I'm going to speak to him probably now.
What are you going to tell him?
Well, look, he's doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back. Just so you understand, Biden is far superior to the VP. He's trying to hold him back, and he probably should be doing the opposite, actually. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do, but it's moving along pretty good.
It's moving along pretty good. During Kamala's speech in Houston Friday night, Vice President Harris warned that Donald Trump will ban abortion nationwide should he return to office. Also appearing at the rally was Texas Democrat Colin Allred, who, according to the latest polling, is within 1 point of beating incumbent Ted Cruz. Beyonce, who is from Texas, also appeared. She supported Hillary Clinton in 2016, Beto O'Rourke in 2018, Joe Biden in 2020, and now she's supporting Kamala Harris. I should mention she endorsed Beto O'Rourke in 2018 at 5 p.m. on Election Day, just a few hours before the polls closed. Let's stay in Texas for a second. In Texas's Bexar County, Sheriff Javier Salazar, a Democrat, said on Friday, quote, "We're asking everyone to tone down the violence." This after a 63-year-old registered Republican was arrested for assaulting a 69-year-old election worker on Thursday. The suspect was asked to remove his MAGA hat after being told political clothing is not allowed in a polling precinct. It's considered electioneering. So the suspect removed the hat, but then put it back on. While the election worker escorted the suspect out of the precinct, the suspect reportedly punched him in the face and chest while the suspect's wife begged her husband to stop. I don't know. Is wearing a MAGA hat electioneering? Is somebody going to walk in to the precinct, cast a ballot, see some gin-blossomed arthritic senior citizen in orthopedic shoes and 50 pounds of cholesterol rolling over his "Don't Mess with Texas" belt buckle, and suddenly think, on second thought, Harris? During a campaign appearance in Michigan, J.D. Vance blamed the high cost of housing on the 25 million undocumented immigrants living in America. The number of undocumented immigrants is 14 million, but if you're J.D. Vance, why quibble over the truth? So it's the reason housing is so expensive, according to J.D. Vance, it's the undocumented migrants who are jacking up the prices of homes. They're the ones keeping Washington, I guess, from not building any new low-cost housing for more than 25 years. Learn about the Faircloth Amendment. We talked about this. It was passed during the Clinton administration, and it prevents Washington. It forbids Washington. It prevents housing and urban development from building new low-income housing unless older low-income housing is rezoned and turned over to wealthy developers, like Jared Kushner. But I guess it was the undocumented migrants who got that Faircloth Amendment passed. With absolutely no studies to back this up, Vance claimed housing costs are 40% higher because of undocumented immigrants. Imagine how much more expensive these houses would be if we didn't have these undocumented immigrants to build them. In the Montana race for Senate, Republican Tim Sheehy is once again being accused of lying about his war injury. Dave Madden, who served as a Navy SEAL in Afghanistan with Sheehy, called him a liar who's trying to portray himself as a war hero. Madden says, quote, Tim and I had about as close a working relationship in a platoon as possible. So when he says he took a bullet in the arm in Afghanistan, we all know it's not true. How did he get the bullet in his arm? Well, most people think he dropped his gun during a camping trip and it landed on asphalt at a state park and the gun went off. The latest polling does not look good for John Tester. If he loses, Democrats then lose control of the Senate unless Colin Allred in Texas, Powell in Florida, or Dan Osborne in Nebraska pull an upset. Those upsets are predicated on, of course, Harris winning the White House. In order for the Democrats to keep control of the Senate, Harris would have to also win the White House, so Coach Waltz, the vice president, could serve as the tie-breaking vote. And it's predicated on Dan Osborne in Nebraska, an independent, deciding to caucus with the Democrats if he wins. He's doing pretty good, Dan Osborne. He's running neck and neck with the Republican incumbent, Deb Fischer. Deadline reports that Kamala Harris's CNN town hall on Wednesday was the network's most watched town hall this year among the key demo of people 25 to 54 years old. All the latest polling shows Kamala Harris beats Trump by huge margins with voters under the age of 30. After Kamala Harris called Donald Trump a fascist during a CNN town hall Wednesday night, Speaker Mike Johnson and Mitch McConnell, Senator Mitch McConnell, the outgoing minority leader of the Senate, they accused Kamala Harris of jeopardizing Donald Trump's life by calling him a fascist. I actually have never called him a fascist. I just call him a Nazi who keeps Hitler's speeches by his nightstand. So I'm not guilty of calling him a fascist. I just call him a Nazi. Kamala Harris defended herself and responded to Mike Johnson and Mitch McConnell by saying the American people deserve to be presented with facts and the truth. Some of the people closest to Donald Trump when he was president, generals, including most recently John Kelly, a 4-star Marine general, have been very clear about the danger and the threat that Donald Trump poses to America and the fact that he is unfit to serve, unquote. General Mark Milley, who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Donald Trump, recently told Bob Woodward, quote, "We have got to stop him. He is the most dangerous person ever. I had suspicions when I talked to you about his mental decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist." According to a brand new ABC poll, 49% of all Americans say they view Donald Trump as a fascist. According to the poll, 12% of Republicans who are voting for Donald Trump say they view him as a fascist. So you hate democracy, but you're still going to vote. No, you're not. You say you're going to vote. You can't figure out the ballot. You're not going to vote. Opening for Harris and Obama before 23,000 people in Atlanta on Thursday, Bruce Springsteen said Donald Trump is running to be an American tyrant. During a campaign appearance in Scranton, Pennsylvania on Friday, Coach Waltz called Elon Musk a dipshit and a lunatic. That's not right. No. You forgot asshole. According to the most recent FEC filings, Elon Musk has now donated at least $120 million towards Trump's get out the vote machine, and it's a disaster. He's accusing the employees of fraud. There's no ground game. Musk has stopped paying $1 million a day to a random voter in the swing states who can prove they voted after he was told by the Department of Justice that's probably illegal. Elon Musk makes the most convincing argument Trump has for keeping immigrants out of our country. Elon had a good week when Tesla reported better than expected quarterly earnings. Tesla added nearly $1 billion in profits during the third quarter thanks to Joe Biden's tax credits for companies fighting climate change, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. But, Trump's his man. Billionaires, just because you have sharp elbows, it doesn't mean you're smart. Well, he's going all in on Trump. So I wonder how Musk ends up getting destroyed. I mean, everyone and everything that Donald Trump comes into contact with ends up destroyed. I wonder how Musk ends up getting destroyed. Well, speaking of everything Donald Trump touches being turned to crap, let's talk about Vince and Linda McMahon. They're a cute couple. Linda McMahon served in Trump's cabinet as administrator of the Small Business Administration. For nearly 30 years, she ran World Wrestling Entertainment with her delightful husband, Vince, who had to leave the day-to-day operations of the company after being sued for sexual assault. You should read the deposition. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever read in my life. There's a threesome. I won't even repeat what he's accused of. Meanwhile, the Justice Department opened an ongoing investigation into allegations that Vince McMahon engaged in sex trafficking and sexual assault. Forget wrestling. Vince McMahon is the one who needs to be fixed. Just spay and neuter this guy. Meanwhile, Linda McMahon continues to be very active in Trump world, where she's been appointed to co-chair Trump's transition team. Only in MAGA world can wrestling be legitimate, but the elections are fake. Everything he touches, he touched Linda McMahon and Vince McMahon. Everything he touches, 5 men, this just came out yesterday, 5 men who worked as ring boys for WWE in the 1980s allege in a new lawsuit that they were groomed and sexually abused by WWE staffers, and Vince and Linda McMahon, according to the lawsuit, knew about this but let it all happen. Wow. Young boys getting molested in the WWE. I had no idea Jim Jordan also coached professional wrestling. By the way, that is Jim Jordan, that picture of Jim Jordan. That's a picture of him repeating something Stormy Daniels once told him about Donald Trump. On Friday, the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch pleaded not guilty to international sex trafficking. 80-year-old Mike Jeffries ran the company between 1992 and 2014. He turned it into a powerhouse clothing brand. He was hired to run Abercrombie by Les Wexner, who owned its parent company, then called The Limited. Sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein served as Wexner's financial advisor between 1987 and 2007. Wexner fired Epstein 18 months after charges were filed against Epstein, where he was charged with unlawful sex with a minor. In the 16-count federal indictment, Jeffries is charged with trafficking young men and then sexually exploiting them while making false promises to hire them as models. In other news, maybe QAnon is right. I mean, what the F? What the F? I mean, I don't know. They're not right, but what the F? Do you like this picture? It's a very famous picture. It's Edward Hopper's portrait of Donald Trump. It's called The Chicken Hawks. I did that through AI. AI is getting dangerous. It's starting to scare me. This is the mop-up for October 26, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And, of course, the best way to support me and grow the community is by sharing this episode via text, email, or social media. Coming up, Tucker Carlson's mother, all about Tucker Carlson's mother. Please go to shopdavidfeldman.com and pick up a worst-case scenario mug. They're really well made. It's the map. I'm going to be going over the polls. You can pick up a worst-case scenario mug. It's a souvenir. It's not blurry, the camera. I need a new camera. It's a souvenir for the 2024 election. I'm going to be going over this to show you why she's going to win. She just needs to win the blue wall, and that gets her to 270. It will calm you down, especially if you put Jameson's in your coffee mug. I keep doing that little joke that I think is funny, right? No, it's not. But I'm trying to sell shit. And I do mean shit. Don't buy it. Anyway, the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Congressman Andy Harris, he's a Republican from Maryland, told donors Thursday that the North Carolina state legislature should award their 16 electoral votes to Donald Trump before the election even takes place. Congressman Andy Harris lied, saying Hurricane Helene has made it impossible for Trump voters in North Carolina to cast their ballots, so the state legislature must intervene and just declare Trump the winner. Here he is just making up crap about the Constitution while talking to donors.
In North Carolina, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you statistically can go and say, hey, look, you got disenfranchised in 25 counties. You know what that vote probably would have been, which would be, if I were in the legislature, enough to go, yeah, we got to convene a legislature, and we can't disenfranchise that vote. But how do you make the argument in other states? I mean, otherwise it looks like it's just a power play. With North Carolina, I mean, it's legitimate. I mean, there are a lot of people who aren't going to get to vote, and it may make a difference in that state.
There's something called the speech or debates clause. It's in the Constitution, and it pretty much says members of Congress can say whatever they want, just make up crap, and it's really hard to sue them for defamation. It's really hard. According to an analysis conducted by the financial news network CNBC, Donald Trump, during the 2024 campaign, has promised 93 million Americans they will no longer have to pay income taxes. That's 38% of the 244 million Americans who are eligible to vote. 38% of Americans eligible to vote are being led to believe by this con artist that if they vote for him, they will live tax-free, just like Donald Trump. Out on the campaign trail, Trump has suggested that police officers, firefighters, veterans, and military personnel should be exempt from paying income taxes. Now, I don't understand why he's saying this. They're not billionaires. Police officers, firefighters, veterans, they're not billionaires. Why would they be exempt from paying income taxes? He also promised to stop taxing tips, no longer taxing overtime and Social Security benefits. No more taxes, no more income taxes for anybody. So how is he going to pay for this? This is the man who added $8 trillion to our national debt. When he left office, 1/3 of our entire national debt was accrued during his 4 years as a failed president. So how is he going to pay for this without racking up more debt? Trump says he will make up for the lost revenue by placing large tariffs on foreign imports, which he lies about, insisting that it is the foreign countries who pay the tariffs. He says that because people who vote for him are gullible imbeciles who believe they will no longer have to pay taxes on anything, no income taxes, and the tariffs, according to Donald Trump, are paid by the foreign countries who have the tariffs imposed on their products. These idiots believe this. Tariffs are paid by American consumers. They are tantamount to a sales tax that would end up costing Americans, by some estimates, $4 trillion over the next decade. And $4 trillion isn't going to pay the federal government's bills. Germany's finance minister on Friday warned that Donald Trump's proposed tariffs would constitute the first salvo in a trade war, and that Germany would reciprocate by imposing tariffs on American imports to his country. So Trump's vision for America is turning the country inward. He would pull us out of NATO, make it so American consumers stop buying foreign imports, and American manufacturers stop selling to countries overseas. In other words, we'd all go bankrupt. And of course, his other promise, no more foreigners living in America. At least no more dark-skinned foreigners coming to America. Here he is in Tempe, Arizona on Wednesday, warning us about dark-skinned people.
The gates to an invasion of criminal migrants from prisons and jails, from insane asylums and mental institutions, from all over the world, from Venezuela to the Congo in Africa. A lot of people coming out of the Congo.
The Congo in Africa. A lot of people coming out of the Congo. And just in case you're too stupid, it's in Africa. It's just so racist. It's so racist. Please continue.
Not just South America, they're coming from 181 countries as of yesterday. Right, and we're a dumping ground. We're like a garbage can for the world. That's what's happened. That's what's happened to we're like a garbage can. You know, it's the first time I've ever said that. Yeah. And every time I come up and talk about what they've done to a country, I get angrier and angrier. First time I've ever said garbage can, but you know what? It's a very accurate description.
Says the human dumpster fire. Then Trump, who, when he's not promising to punish his political enemies, insists he's never said he's going to punish his political enemies, told the crowd, quote, "We should throw Jack Smith out with them, the mentally deranged people. Jack Smith should be considered mentally deranged, and he should be thrown out of the country." Actually, he said that on a conservative radio show. He didn't say that to the crowd. Well, where am I? Opening for Donald Trump in Duluth, Georgia on Wednesday was Tucker Carlson, who told the crowd Trump is America's daddy and it's time for him to give us a spanking. Now, you probably heard the speech. Let me give it a little context here. Tucker Carlson's mother hated him. She was a smart woman. When Tucker turned 6, she said, "I'm out of here," and she never spoke to him again. Tucker's mom was born into immense wealth, but before she died, she wrote Tucker out of her will. For years, it had been rumored that she only left him $1. And then it was confirmed by Snopes and the San Jose Mercury News 2 years ago. This is what she wrote. August of 1995, Lisa Lombardi. This was about 16 years before she died. I leave my sons Tucker Swanson, McNair Carlson, and Buckley Swanson Peck Carlson $1 each. $1 each. Why did she put it in writing? So the will couldn't be challenged. And you have to leave by leaving $1. It makes it airtight. She says, I'm leaving them money. They can't say I didn't leave them money. I'm leaving them $1. She hated Tucker Carlson. Back on April 30th, 2022, the New York Times did an expose on Carlson when he was riding high over at Fox News. The article is entitled, How Tucker Carlson Stoked White Fear to Conquer Cable. Let me go big here and read to you this little nugget. By his account, Tucker's account, his mother made clear to her two young sons that she had little affection for them. She hated them. Quote, when you realize your own mother doesn't like you, when she says that, it's like, oh, gosh. Adding, he felt all kinds of rage about it. She hated him. Megyn Kelly, remember her? She used to be on Fox News, and then she went over to NBC and got fired because of her storied history of racially charged statements, like saying Jesus and Santa are white. And then she said on the Today Show, when she was hosting it, there's nothing wrong with wearing blackface. Well, she got fired. She later landed a radio show on Sirius. And back on September 4th, 2021, Megyn Kelly had Tucker Carlson on her show, racist to racist, and she got him to open up about how much Tucker's mother hated him.
I don't talk about this a lot, but I do want to follow up on your mom taking off because
she hated you, because your mother hated you, and you're broken inside.
Well, it's kind of like a Kramer versus Kramer situation, right? They got a divorce and she took off, and same age, but she didn't come back. But to your point, if your mom doesn't like you...
I never talked to her again.
He never talked to her again. She left when he was 6, which begs the question, how was she able to stay that long? Well, tell us how you handled her death and discovering she left you $1 in her will.
I got this call like she's dying, and in this weird little town on a farm that she lived on in southwestern France, and she was basically French at this point, spent her life there. You should go visit her. And so I call my brother, and he's like, what? No. My son's got a soccer game. And I said, I feel the same way. I don't know this person. And actually, this sounds cold or whatever, but I had already kind of made my peace with this over many decades, over 35 years.
Sure you have. It's so obvious that you've made your peace because you're so well adjusted. You don't need a shrink. You worked it all out. It's so obvious. You're the picture of mental health, Tucker Carlson. Then Megyn Kelly pretended she's introspective.
When a child is, quote, abandoned by his or her mother, it can lead to doubts about you being lovable, difficulty trusting people, and in most kids, it'll lead the child to blame himself because they're so little. 6 is little. Did any of that happen to you? How do you think it affected you?
Well, Megyn, it turned me into a frightened and vindictive little man who decided if my mother hates me, then I will take it out on the rest of the world. Well, did it affect you, Tucker?
Well, I'm sure it did. I had periods in my younger life when I, partied too much, for real. Not just have too many beers at a party, but actually partied too much, again, for real. So I look back on that and I think, I learned some stuff from those experiences, but I also wonder, why did I behave that way?
Because you're consumed with self-loathing, because your mother hated you, so you hate the world and yourself. But go on. By the way, is he in a closet? Is that a closet? He's in a closet. Not because of the acoustics. I think that's just it. He finds it very comforting to be in the closet. Okay, go on.
But, our mom was not a fan of us and was pretty direct about it.
Not a fan. She hated you. Your mother hated you. She left you when you were 6. Go on.
You just can't control it. And your mother doesn't like you. Okay, boo-hoo. It sounds really terrible, but...
But it's really terrible. It is really terrible. This happens to a lot of people. And if they don't get help, if they don't find peace, if they don't learn forgiveness, they turn into you. They turn into you. So tell me, Tucker Carlson, are you capable of introspection?
So looking back, it's hard to understand yourself except through your behavior, I think. Yeah. That's, what you're really like. That's how it manifests itself.
It's hard to understand yourself except through your behavior. Interesting. So your behavior, what you say and what you do. I agree with that. So Tucker Carlson's mother left him when he was 6. He never spoke to her again. And he seems to have accepted that his mother, our first love, despised him. And the best way, according to Tucker Carlson, to understand how he processed all that, the best way to understand how he processed it is manifested through his own behavior. Well, most of you have seen this video, but I hope I've provided a little context. I'm going to play Tucker earlier in the week opening for Donald Trump in Duluth, Georgia, telling the audience of MAGA morons that America is a teenage girl that needs a spanking from daddy, and daddy is Donald Trump. Listen to how revealing and sick this is.
If you allow your 2-year-old to smear the contents of his diapers on the wall of your living room, and you do nothing about it, if you allow your 14-year-old to light a joint at the breakfast table, if you allow your hormone-addled 15-year-old daughter to slam the door of her bedroom and give you the finger, you're gonna get more of it. And those kids are gonna wind up in rehab. It's not good for you, and it's not good for them. No. There has to be a point at which dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. Dad comes home. And he's pissed. Dad is pissed. He's not vengeful. He loves his children. Disobedient as they may be, he loves them. Because they're his children, they live in his house. But he's very disappointed in their behavior. And he's gonna have to let them know. He's gonna have to get to your room right now and think about what you did. And when dad gets home, you know what he says? You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now. And no, it's not gonna hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it's not. I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. And you earned this. You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl. And it has to be this way. It has to be this way because it's true. And you're only going to get better when you take responsibility for what you did. That's not said in the spirit of hate. It's not said in the spirit of vengeance or bigotry. Far from it. It's said in the spirit of justice, which is the purest and best thing there is. And without it, things fall apart.
The most anodyne part of this is he's advocating hitting your kids. I mean, that's the least of it. It's like it never even occurred to me that he's talking about beating your kids. It's just so creepy. He's sad, little, frightened, bigoted Nazi. This is who the Nazis were. These are Nazis. So one of the things I like to do is take the words of these monsters. These are monsters. I like to take their words verbatim and put them in the mouths of a cartoon character, because when you hear Tucker Carlson's words, Donald Trump's words, when you hear these words verbatim coming from the mouth of a cartoon character, you can fully understand what they're saying and what they mean.
If you allow your 2-year-old to smear the contents of his diapers on the wall of your living room and you do nothing about it, if you allow your 14-year-old to lie to join at the breakfast table, if you allow your hormone-addled 15-year-old daughter to, slam the door of her bedroom and give you the finger, you're going to get more of it, and those kids are going to wind up in rehab. It's not good for you, and it's not good for them. No, there has to be a point at which Dad comes home. Yeah, that's right. Dad comes home, and he's pissed. Dad is pissed. He's not vengeful. He loves his children, disobedient as they may be. He loves them because they're his children. They live in his house, but he's very disappointed in their behavior, and he's going to have to let them know. He's going to have to get to your room right now and think about what you did. And when Dad gets home, you know what he says. You've been a bad girl. You've been a bad little girl, and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now. And no, it's not going to hurt me more than it hurts you. No, it's not. I'm not going to lie. This is going to hurt you a lot more than it hurts me. And you earned this. You're getting a vigorous spanking because you've been a bad girl, and it has to be this way. It has to be this way because it's true, and you're only going to get better when you take responsibility for what you did. That's not said in the spirit of hate. It's not said in the spirit of vengeance or bigotry. Far from it. It's said in the spirit of justice, which is the purest and best thing there is. And without it, things fall apart.
You are listening to the Mop-Up for October 26, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode and share it. Please share that, please. I just think I'm going to be doing more of that. I'm learning animation, and it's, well, anyway. Please go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Pick up useless garbage like the worst case scenario mug that isn't, there we go. And how are we doing on time? Do I want to discuss the polls? Very quickly. Gas prices have dropped below $3 a gallon in some parts and are now at a 3-year low. Okay, good news for Kamala Harris. Okay, very quickly, this is the worst case scenario map. You know the drill. Let's go to the national polling averages. Okay, this is from the Washington Post, which is very selective in what polls it includes in its national averages. And you will see, since the beginning of this month, Donald Trump has only taken the lead in a Wall Street Journal poll, a CNBC poll, gee, what do they have in common? And a Fox News poll. What do they have in common? All right, so she's going to win the popular vote. Harris is leading Trump in all 3 states comprising the blue wall. Let's look at the Washington Post's polling averages. These are very selective. They do a pretty good job weeding out the cranks, okay? The blue wall, Pennsylvania. Harris leads by 1. It's shifted a little. You can see that Trump gained 0.2 percentage point. So people who want to create the illusion that there's a horse race tell you that there's momentum for Trump in Pennsylvania. Wisconsin, Harris leads by 2 points. The shift has been 0.2 of a percentage point for Donald Trump in the past week. So people are saying, momentum, momentum. That's not momentum. And Michigan, Harris leads by 2 points. The shift in the past week is Harris gaining 0.3 of a percentage point. People want to create the illusion that this is tighter than it actually is. Let us go to the Michigan polls, okay? Donald Trump, since the beginning of the month, only beat her in an AARP poll and a Quinnipiac University poll. He's not going to win Michigan. Let's look at the polls since she became a candidate, okay? So this is July 21st. That's where Biden drops out, okay? And Trump is clearly leading. But then you see by early August, he starts going down and Kamala Harris goes into the lead, and she has stayed in the lead ever since, throughout most of August, all of September, and most of October. Look at this. And she's up 2 points. These are A-plus polls, this isn't garbage data. The Washington Post is very selective. Okay? Let's look at how the polling averages that they use, how they performed in previous elections. People always say, well, they got it wrong. All right, you're going to find a trend here. Everybody got 2016 wrong. But 2020 in Michigan, they said Joe Biden was going to win by 6. He won by 3. They were off by 3 points. In 2016, everybody crapped the bed. There's never been a candidate like Donald Trump, so it's very hard to poll on him. You have stealth Trump voters, and that's what screwed things up in 2016. And they got, in 2012, they said Obama was going to beat Romney by 6, and he actually beat Romney by 9. So they were off by 4. But they've gotten Michigan pretty right. Okay, this is where people get a little confused. They hear of election forecasting. So I've been reading the election forecasts, the modeling coming out of The Economist and YouGov. I think these are the most accurate forecasters. And if you don't understand what forecasting is, you can be led to believe the race is tightening. It's not. Okay, here we go. This is Michigan. These are election models, right, where they run hundreds and hundreds of simulations, taking into account the economy, demographics, historical polling averages. This is forecasting is it's dicey, it's tricky. It's like trying to be a mutual fund manager, trying to predict the stock market. Most people fail at it. But this is what you're picking up on when you hear there's anxiety in the Democratic Party. Okay? Michigan has 15 electoral votes, and you see this. She's winning Michigan, but in the past 7 days, she's lost 3 out of 100 computer simulations of the election. Right now, they have her winning 56 out of 100 elections. They have Donald Trump winning 44 out of 100 elections. He's up 3, okay? See what's going on here? She's still winning Michigan, but he's trending, and this is just garbage. This is why I'm putting it on at the end of the show. This is like justifying salaries for number crunchers coming up with this junk. So, okay, that's Michigan. Let's go to, what are we doing here? Okay, and you should probably stop watching now. This is the computer simulations going all the way back to when she became the presumptive nominee in Michigan. You see this? She took the lead in the simulations the minute she became the candidate. And on October 22, some of those simulations in Michigan showed the race tightening for like 2 days. And now we see it. She's winning 56 out of 100 simulations. So Michigan is hers, especially because there's a senator, a congresswoman, Elisa Slotkin, who's running for Senate. And the computer simulations here show her beating Mike Rogers. Look at that, 77 out of 100 elections. Mike Rogers wins 23 in 100 election simulations, and they have her beating him by 4 points. That is the most recent forecast for Michigan. You should probably stop watching because I'm almost done. This is very dry, but I want to show you how people create the illusion that Harris is in trouble. She's not. Okay, let us now go to Wisconsin, okay? These are the polling averages from the Washington Post. A+. Wisconsin, how many times in the past month has Donald Trump beaten Kamala Harris in an A+ poll? Once. A Quinnipiac University poll shows him beating her by 2 percentage points, well within the margin of error. Okay, let's look at the polling averages in Wisconsin since she became the presumptive nominee. Joe Biden drops out on July 21st. What happens? Kamala Harris takes the lead, and right there in late July, and she never let go of the lead in Wisconsin, which shows her right now, polling averages show her beating Donald Trump by 2 percentage points. The simulation right now in Wisconsin shows Donald Trump up 4 in the past 7 days. In other words, the forecasters ran 100 simulations, and Donald Trump won 51 out of 100 simulations. Harris won 49 out of 100 simulations. In the past week, he has begun to win a few more simulations. This means nothing. It means nothing, but this is forecasting. This is what they do to make it look tighter than it actually is. These are the simulations going all the way back to early August. So you see, she's been winning the simulations. It begins to change briefly in mid-October, but now she's going up in the simulations. But if you're looking at simulations, which you shouldn't, Donald Trump has had a good week in simulations, not in the polls, in simulations where they take into account the economy, ad buying, historical demographics, how similar states to Wisconsin are polling. I mean, this is sorcery. Sorcery. And again, the most important thing is the Senate race, the down ballot, the marquee down ballot Senate race. Tammy Baldwin, okay? The computer simulations show her beating her opponent, Eric Hovde. Take a look at this. This is your ground game, okay? Tammy Baldwin in the most recent computer simulations, beats Eric Hovde 82 out of 100 times. The simulations show her beating Hovde by 5 points. Okay? There will not be ticket splitting. People aren't going to go into the voting booth in Wisconsin, vote for Tammy Baldwin, and then vote for Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. Let's look at Pennsylvania. Now, I saved Pennsylvania for last because it's the key state. She has to win Pennsylvania. If she doesn't win Pennsylvania, then she has to win either Georgia or North Carolina. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. So she needs to win. If she doesn't win Pennsylvania, then she has to win either Georgia or North Carolina and either Nevada, which she's up in, or Arizona. Or she needs to win both Georgia and North Carolina. So Pennsylvania, this race comes down to Pennsylvania. The polling averages since mid-September show we have one new poll showing Trump beating her by 1 point with a sample size of 583, but this is an A-plus poll. And then the Wall Street Journal at the beginning of October shows Trump beating her in Pennsylvania. Look at that. 2 polls. 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2 out of 10 A-plus polls show her losing to Donald Trump. So, how have the polls changed since she became the presumptive nominee? Look at this. Look. Biden drops out late July. She immediately takes the lead in Pennsylvania, never, ever lets go of it. She's up by 1, according to the polling averages. How did they do? How did these polls do previously? Okay. Well, in 2020, they said Joe Biden would win Pennsylvania by 4 percentage points. Biden won it by 1 percentage point. They underestimated Trump by 3 percentage points. 2016, they said Clinton was going to win by 4. Trump won by 1, so they underestimated Trump by 5. And in 2012, they said Obama was going to win by 6. He actually beat Romney by 5. And as they say, it's a negligible miss. So this is what's making people nervous. This is forecasting, okay? Forecasting is not the polling averages. These are scientists, mathematicians, sociologists, hucksters trying to make money. And this is what's getting people nervous. Okay, Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. These are polling. This isn't polling, this is election forecasting. They ran 100 simulations in the past week. Donald Trump did very well. He won 56 out of 100 simulations in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris won 44 out of 100 simulations. Now, simulations do take into account ground games, advertising, historical demographics, but she has, so they show right now Donald Trump winning Pennsylvania by 1 percentage point. Pennsylvania has zigged and zagged, okay? You see that when it comes to simulations, it's been all over the map. You see, I mean, it's a mess. Pennsylvania is going to be tight. We always knew Pennsylvania was going to be tight. But the ground game. There is the ground game that Elon Musk is spending a fortune on, and it's not working. And then there's the real ground game, the down ballot marquee Senate race, Bob Casey, incumbent. People are not going to vote for Bob Casey and then vote for Donald Trump. And all the polls show Bob Casey beating David McCormick, a hedge fund manager. And look at these simulations from this week. Bob Casey wins 80 out of 100 simulations. David McCormick wins 20 out of 100 simulations. There is absolutely no way, Bob Casey is going to win re-election without Pennsylvania going to Kamala Harris. There is absolutely no way. And there you have it. There you have the blue wall, the worst case scenario map. She gets to 270. Am I nervous? Yes. But he's going to lose. And I'm not telling anybody to calm down, because I'm not calm. I'm not sleeping. After this can never happen again. We get through this, and then this can never, ever happen again. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you so much for listening. This has been the Mop-Up for October 26, 2024. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And, of course, share it. I always say this, the only reason I have an audience is because of my audience. And check out shopdavidfeldman.com and pick up some useless garbage you don't need, like the worst case scenario map on a coffee mug. Halloween, you're going to have to pay for rush shipping. You can pick up this souvenir from the 2029 inaugural ball. Donald Trump is a sexual predator. You might want to check out that coffee mug. And for your MAGA moron friends, buy a MAGA hat. They can't read, so they won't be able to see in the back that it says low IQ individual. Edvard Munch's The Scream featuring Donald Trump. This is my favorite. I love that. And if you want to hurt me, go buy the bestseller. This is what everybody buys to hurt me. It's a chef's apron with the words, "I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." I think I'm so smart, poring over the polls and thinking I'm cultivating this really bright audience. And this is what you buy. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments. I accidentally called General John Kelly Mark Kelly on the last show. His name is John Kelly. I was thinking of General Mark Milley. And some people wrote to me and said Medicare for All polls very well. It polls well when it's a push poll, when people are told what exactly Medicare for All is, then they go, oh yeah, I'm for it. But that requires the pollster, it's called a push poll. You have to explain what Medicare for All is before people are for it. But Americans still have been brainwashed into believing they still like their for-profit health insurance company. And somebody sent me a note about a study, I think it came out of Princeton, proving that polls don't matter, we're still an oligarchy. That if this study was made of legislation that polled very well, but the oligarchs didn't want it, and it never passed. So I said you have to move the polls in order to pass important legislation. One of my listeners mentioned a study that I am familiar with that proves we're an oligarchy, that whatever we want, they don't care what we want. I'll discuss that. That poll is partly true, but not now. Thank you. No show tomorrow. Either a show at 2:30 a.m. the following day. If I can get some sleep, which I'm not getting, I'll do a show. I'll either do one early Monday morning at 2:30 or early Tuesday morning at 2:30 a.m. Thank you so much for listening. It'll be okay. It's going to be okay.